Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for this Instagram Live. It's been 2 weeks since we had one, and I'm happy to be here with you this afternoon. I hope your term is going well. We're now a month into it, which is pretty amazing to think about. And there have been planning questions coming up about the spring term and about the winter and ending the term and um, things happening in December. And I know that for all of us, December is going to come here very quickly. But fortunately, right now, we're still feeling a little bit of summer, and even though it's officially fall. And I hope for you that's turning out to be good and you can get a little some enjoyment out of these last days of summer and these days of fall before we're facing that winter weather. This past week has not been an easy one, I'm sure, for most of us. We had the very sad news of the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice on the Supreme Court, and native New Yorker, someone who was a resolute advocate and supporter of equity in many different ways on the Supreme Court. And she's going to be terribly missed. And, it's hard to overstate that. It was very shocking, sad news that we got. So I wanted to move on. There have been a few questions that have come in over the last 2 weeks, not too many, but a few, and we'll watch to see what other questions come up. But one of the questions that came in is about today. Isn't today a holiday? And today is Yom Kippur. It's the holiest day in Judaism. And there are no classes today. All the colleges in CUNY are open. Lehman College is open, and services are being provided, and offices are doing their work. But it's as with other religious holidays. Even if classes are ongoing, which they are for many other religious holidays. Students who are observant for those holidays are able to have permission to not be in class and can work out alternate arrangements. So just reiterating something that's a policy within the university, and for those of you who are observing the holiday, for those who are observing, we're respectful of that, as we all are for all religious holidays of our students at Lehman College. And one of the things we always say about Lehman College, right, is that it is a very diverse place, and that diversity runs in all kinds of dimensions, and one of them is religious diversity. And so we have a very large variety of religions represented among our student body, and also no religion. So I think that's just one of those important ways in which, as an academic and an intellectual and an educational community, it's very important that we all have that respect, right, for each other, for our beliefs or for our non-beliefs, and see that as just one of those fundamentals that every individual has the right to choose and to express. And we want to allow for that within our academic life. One of the questions that came in is about the Apex. Will the Apex be open? And the Apex has been closed since March, and it is not going to be open to the public or to staff and students. And for those, though, who have belongings in the gym, that you can arrange to pick up what you would need to pick up if you have it in a locker in the gym. You can do that through Student Affairs by emailing Student Affairs, and you can work out an arrangement to do that. And just to anticipate probably a follow-up question to that, we will not be opening the Apex. I think it's fairly safe to say we won't be opening the Apex through this academic year. I don't anticipate that it would be open in the spring either. And so if there are things there that you want to get out, then you should arrange to do that. Another question that came in is around coronavirus grants for students. Will there be other funds available? On the federal side, I'm sure you're watching what's happening or what's not happening. A couple of weeks ago, the Senate Republicans put forward a skinny COVID-19 pandemic bill, and that got no chance whatsoever of passing. And so we seem to be caught in this limbo situation now leading up to the election. And it's probably unlikely that we're going to know anything before the election at a minimum. So no, there's nothing happening on the federal level. Both the legislation that's proposed in the House, that passed the House and was proposed in the Senate, did have further funding for higher education. And I'm hopeful that when funding is approved, that no matter what the package looks like, that there will be funding in there for that, but we just can't count on it right now. In the meantime, both CUNY and Lehman College have continued to work very hard to raise money from non-government sources to support students in a variety of ways. So some of that funding has come in to support students for around issues of food. So our virtual food bank has remained in operation. It's also emergency grants for other kinds of needs that have come up for students, which I know there are many, and also funds for things like technology that we're trying to make sure we take care of students' needs. So both Lehman College, where we've raised over $1 million and dispersed a lot of that funding, and some of it is funding that will stretch more than 1 year. So we're not able to allocate all of that funding right now. But we're happy with what we have been able to do, but we know we need to continue to do more. CUNY also has raised, I think it's approaching now $8 to $9 million that also is funding for students to meet immediate needs for students, and Lehman students are benefiting from that funding as well. So we're all working hard to take care of the needs that we know are continuing into the fall and will be continuing, on through the end of this year and into the next year. And hopefully by sometime early next year, there will be federal funding that will augment that. And that can be a significant source of support for students. I want to just remind you, while we're on that topic, again, that we do have a virtual center that's on our webpage. It's linked to from the homepage of our webpage, where we list out all the resources that are available, how to contact offices, and want to just remind you to consult with that. Look for resources that you may not know about that could be of help in a variety of ways. We want to do everything we can, including not only the financial, which we know is important, but also with counseling and other ways in which the college can provide support for you. So please do go to that page and find the resources that you think will be helpful to you. So in the 2 weeks that it's been since we had an Instagram Live session, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're now over a month into the term, and one of the things that we're trying to do on campus is to keep the activities going, to keep events happening, even though they're happening virtually. And I hope you're watching for announcements of the various events that are coming up. I'm not going to highlight any particular ones right now, but I'm hoping we'll all see that we, as much as we possibly can, we're continuing the activities that we would have had in a normal in-person fall. And those include seminars and presentations that will be given throughout this term. And so please do take advantage of those as you can. It's one other important way besides just the coursework and staying up with classes that we have a way of remaining connected, and that we have a way of sort of still functioning together in the way that we want to. One of the things that I keep bringing up and reminding everyone is that we still have some time. In fact, there was a judicial ruling that the census in New York City can now be completed up through the next month, so not ending in September 30. And I think that's the final word on that, at least at the moment. So there is time. We still need to get the census filled out. So please keep getting the word out to everybody that you know. And then on voting, we're less than 40 days now away from the election, and early voting will begin really before too long. So please make sure. Remember, we want to make sure that Lehman votes, and we want to have an even larger percentage of Lehman students voting than in the last election, which was also well above the national average, about 53% overall. We want to get that higher. So please vote, get prepared to vote, be registered, and early vote if at all possible, or get a mail-in ballot, an absentee ballot, but prepare to vote, and please be an ambassador to everybody that you know to have a high vote turnout in this election. That it's very important that we do that. So one of the comments that I'm seeing is, and I mentioned activities that are ongoing, and I didn't mention clubs, but of course the clubs, all the student clubs are active and are meeting and having virtual meetings. But the comment is you miss the in-person, and that is so true. And even though we can accomplish a lot when we're working virtually, there's no question that there's something we're missing by not being able to be face-to-face and in person. So, and we can't do anything about it, but that's just the reality, isn't it? We really do. We miss that in-person part. Question about will CUNY be open next year? And so that word open is important. We've actually always been open. We've never really closed CUNY or closed Lehman College, but we've had limited access, and that will continue next year. I noticed the headline this morning that North Carolina State, which had opened up for an in-person fall term and then had to shut down because they had basically a huge outbreak there of COVID-19, and now they've announced that they will be virtual in the spring. I'm expecting to see lots and lots of colleges and universities making that same decision. There has been no change in the COVID-19 situation. The most recent studies indicate that across the entire United States, only about 10% of people have been exposed to COVID-19, which means 90% are still vulnerable. That's probably lower. I think the estimates for all over New York City is around 20% have been exposed, but that still means 80% of the people in the New York City area have not been exposed and are vulnerable. And we don't have a vaccine, and we're not going to have a disseminated vaccine until somewhere around the first of the year if we're lucky. So we will continue to be doing everything virtually in the spring, I'm quite sure. And what does that mean about commencement in May? Well, it's early to be making really definitive statements about commencement in May, but I guess I would have to say realistically, I think that's going to be a real question mark, because unless we've really reached the point where we have a largely immunized population, either just through exposure to the virus or to having a successful vaccine. Large gatherings will not be allowed in New York State. I know that, and so there for the circumstances to be such that we could have a large in-person gathering, a lot of things have to happen. Let's hope they do. I hope they do, but we'll see. So will we have a chance to go back to campus next year? Next year means I'm going to take that to mean will we be able to be on campus in the next academic year starting fall 21? And all I can say is I hope so. And it's certainly possible that we could be. Will we be? Do I think that it's likely? I can't really say. I just don't know, and I don't think any of us could really say that. I think one thing we've learned right in the last 6 months is we just have to be prepared for many different options because we just don't know what will happen, and so I think at this stage we're all in the zone of hoping that there's a vaccine. And hoping that that vaccine will be effective and will be highly effective, not 50%, but 70, 80% effective at least. And we can count on it. And so then we can actually see our lives go back to something that looks more normal. One of the things that not only are we missing the in-person opportunities for clubs and for classes and for everything else, we're missing just being on our beautiful campus. And, our campus is beautiful just about all seasons of the year, isn't it? It's beautiful in the spring, of course, but it's also beautiful in the fall. And now we're moving into that fall season where the colors start to change. And so it's we're having to miss all of that. And just being in that environment itself, that's kind of pulls us all out of the intensity of kind of being in New York City and the urban environment to something that's just a little bit of an oasis in the city. We're all missing that, and we're not getting the benefits of that. So hopefully by next fall, we will be able to have those again, and we'll all be able to experience the benefits of this beautiful campus that our buildings and grounds staff does such a terrific job of maintaining and nurturing for all of us. So one of the aspects of the campus that we will see when we all are able to come back is that there's a lot of work that's going on. There's been work that's been going on the facade, the outside of Music Hall, but then over towards the apex, the amphitheater is being rebuilt, and it will be finished by the time we're all able to come back onto campus without restrictions. And so we'll have a new amphitheater, and we'll notice some really great changes there. There are lots of other things that are underway or will be underway. One of the things that I've been asked at various times is what's happening to the new nursing building. And that project is moving ahead, and what will be happening before too long will be the demolition of the old bookstore, because that's where the new nursing building is going to be built. And so the first part of that project will be to raise the old bookstore, and then the site work can begin for the basement foundation of the nursing building and so on. So that's moving ahead. When we all come back to campus, we will see that area under construction to some degree. So another great change that will be accomplished over the next couple of years until we've got a new nursing building, which will be a terrific home for what really, I think it's the second or first largest program that we have at Lehman College. One of the things that's projects that's also been planned for some time, and will be pretty visible to us, will be a new design for the inside of the music hall as we go in, and something that I'm really looking forward to seeing completed. And so that's one you can put on your list of things to look for when you're able to come back to campus. So one of the questions that was submitted is around contrasting what we're doing at CUNY with what the public schools are doing in the city. And the public schools had to delay opening from when they planned to open. So that hasn't all gone according to plan, and you may have noticed that there's been a lot of concern by public school teachers, particularly about the safety of certain buildings, and even CUNY with Hunter High School has had to work at issues around air and air filtration and so on. So that's even though the public schools in the city had planned to open, even they have not exactly followed what they planned to do, and have really been looked a lot more like CUNY in some ways. But they will open eventually, at least for part of the week for students. Why is that different from the university? Well, one of the things that has really, I think, been, a pretty clear difference between what happens in the K through 12 or the pre-K through 12 education system is a difference in risk, at least for the students, not necessarily for teachers, but for the students, and particularly in the lower grades, that the younger children, pre-K through second grade or third grade, and maybe even fourth grade, themselves are less vulnerable to COVID-19. It's still an open question about whether those children that age are able to spread the virus to their families. And I just don't think there's a definitive answer on that. But certainly in terms of risk to themselves, there seems to be less. And the risk to their educational progress by not having in-person school is much greater than it is for older children, and certainly for college students. So for younger children, I think there's pretty wide agreement among educators that these early years of education are really critical. We know that, but also that those children in those ages just don't do nearly as well with online only education. So it's been important for the schools to find ways, if they can, to have children back in school as soon as they can. New York has been very fortunate in having, over the last 3 months, very, very low incidence of new cases of COVID-19. There have been spots where there have been spreader events. We're hearing about them. We're hearing about some of the schools in Brooklyn where that's really been an issue. By and large, though, that hasn't. And so the question is, what will happen once the schools do go into session, students start to come? Will that begin to create spreader events? And there is some possibility that it could, but that's really a matter of weighing the benefits of having those children, particularly the younger ones, back in school as opposed to the risk. With college, it's very different calculation, and where we do the risk and the benefit analysis, it's very clear that if we assemble on campus, we are significantly raising the risk, and that's been shown at campuses all around the United States. So that's not really a doubt, and so then it's a question of, well, what is the cost, or what is the benefit, let's say, and when we do that analysis, it's clear we'd rather have the option to have more in-person classes, because we really believe those in-person classes help and they add something to the education, and that's why we don't aspire, and we never will aspire to be an online only college. However, we also, given the risk um, of, of increasing the spread and the infection and leading to COVID-19, um, the risk really is not something that we want to take. The benefits are just not there. We know that we can continue our education doing it as we're doing it, almost 98.5% online and at a distance. And it's, as I said, it's not the way we would really choose to do it, but we know that we can do it, and we are doing it, and we've planned for it, and we've continue to work at ways to do it better. So it's a very different risk, benefit, cost kind of analysis for colleges and universities than it is for particularly pre-K through fourth grade and up education. So that's why. That's the way we're reasoning through it, trying to pay a lot of attention to the data that we get to understand what risks really are. So let me just make sure that we covered all the questions that have come in here. There was a question around scholarships. I'm not sure exactly what that's referring to, but in terms of scholarships, what typically has happened at Lehman College is there are a number of scholarships dedicated for various areas, and the Lehman College Foundation, one of its major tasks is to raise money to support scholarships. And so our goal is to continue those programs as we have in the past. And of course, we're trying to also to add more, to build those programs to increase the number of scholarships that are available to Lehman College students. And I'm optimistic that over the next few years we will be able to do that. And so that's a big goal, because we know that scholarships are really important for students in addition to the other kinds of support that are available. So we're working on that, and we will continue to do everything we can. So one of the comments that I'm seeing that I think is a really, really great comment and concern, which is just a concern about, even though we know that we can do our online curriculum and we can deliver content, you can have the content, but it's still, there are concerns about learning and about whether it can be sufficient, whether the quality is sufficient, and just the challenges that you as students are experiencing to carve out a physical space and to carve out time for courses the way that we're offering them. And there's no question that that is a challenge for so many students. And what we want to do is to do better and continue to do better, to learn from what's working, what's not working. And one of the things that I want to continue to advise students to do is to give feedback to your instructors. Let them know what's working and what's not working for you. You know how to do that. You know how to do that in a way that's constructive. But we all need feedback. We need to hear things that are not working at all, things that could be done better, and your suggestions, because I'm totally convinced, and this is from my own experience as a professor, I know that we can learn a lot as we go through the term, and we can continually improve and make things better, make this online environment work better. So do give your thoughts, give your feedback to your instructors. Let them know. And as somebody has commented, it's a challenge for the instructors too, and that is for sure. And again, I can tell you that from my own experience as a faculty member, and putting most of the material for my courses, all of them, online. That's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort. And anytime that you do something as an instructor in a class, if you're really paying attention and thinking about it, you're realizing that it could be improved and you could do it better. And particularly if it's something you haven't ever done before, like teach a class totally online. But that's what we're determined to do. We are determined to do it better and to make it better and to make it work for you. So your feedback is really important. So I'm looking to see if we get any other questions. If not, I think we'll draw this session to a close. Um, so, here's a question that I really can't answer. It's about using Blackboard for presentations. Are there alternatives to that? And that's a really great question. I know that Zoom allows for screen sharing, and so that's another platform where you can present things and do it pretty effectively. But where there are other alternatives, I really can't answer that question. I think that's a great one to ask your professors to look into. If you feel like there's a way in which Blackboard isn't having some kind of function that you think could be better, ask them about it. Ask them to investigate. So then the follow-up is there a way for students to meet with professors in person for those presentations? And right now the answer to that is no, there really isn't. Because what we're trying to do right now in this distance environment is to minimize contact. And so, no, there isn't, unfortunately, a way that can happen. That's one of those things, though, that as we move through this term and as we learn both what works educationally, what works for you as students, but also what can be done without jeopardizing health, without putting people at risk. Maybe we're going to find ways that we can do some of these things. And I don't know, but I think we need to really be looking for that and seeing what we can do. It's a question about the Child Care Center. What's happening with it? The Child Care Center has been open throughout the whole COVID pandemic. We kept it open at the request of the state to provide child care for healthcare workers who needed that for their children, but we really had very few children in the Child Care Center over that period of time. But it has stayed open, and it will remain open. Having child care centers open has been a priority for the university, for the state, and for Lehman College. So it is remaining open, and like every other part of the college, the Child Care Center has a protocol that has to follow about how people come in and out, about screening, and so on. So it's being done in a way that we think is safe, but it does have to follow the same protocols. Whether it will change its functioning over time, again, is an open question. It really depends on what's happening, again, with the overall pandemic. So I think with that, I'm going to bring this Instagram live session to a close. Again, I want to thank each of you for attending. Thank you for your questions. And 3 things: census, vote, and give your instructors feedback, because we want to learn from you about how we can do this better during this time when we really don't have any other way that we can. So thanks again for joining me, and I look forward to our next session.